Everybody, and welcome to the second midweek marketing mix. It's still taking me a little bit of time to say that very quickly, so I'll speed up as time goes on. But thank you for joining me, and thank you to my great panel of guests down below. As I've got to bring this comment in immediately from Ray, because I think it absolutely sums it up, and I was very conscious of this, which is looking forward to this powerhouse panel of guests. Sorry to be bringing along another Y chromosome. So sorry, Krishna, you are a little bit outnumbered, and especially as Krishna will be kicking us off with this, and she'll kill me for saying that. But in the midweek marketing mix, what we're trying to do is give you the most up-to-date, new, exciting news within all realms of marketing, whether it be social, SEO, Hangouts, content marketing, anything that we can sort of pack into a 10-minute slot, and each of the guests sort of, as the experts that they are, and we have another great panel this week, will give you as much as they can in that 10-minute slot to give you the maximum in a sort of a 50 to 60-minute hangout. So without further ado, to talk about these Y chromosomes, I'm going to bring in Krishna to talk very aptly about shopping, which is very, very mean of me. So Krishna, obviously we want to talk about Shoppable Hangouts and what's going on with all of that. So tell us, what is happening?
Okay, so thank you so much for being here, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your other guests. It's great to have such a rich group of people around you in terms of being able to share ideas and tips here. So I just thought I'd get started in terms of talking about Shoppable Hangouts, and some of your viewers may not have come across Shoppable Hangouts previously, and I know that Eric, who will be joining us later, actually hosted an event himself, which we can probably put in the show notes, about actually with somebody from Google talking about this whole idea. So to do so, what I thought I'd do is share some screenshots in terms of what's going on at this point in time. And so you should see my screen now, and I thought I'd go back a little bit of way back to December time. So the idea of a Shoppable Hangout is that when we're hosting Hangouts on air, we actually can also have it so that people can look at content and actually click through to make a purchase. So I picked this example up first, and I should say I've got an article which you'll find on my Google Plus profile, but it's also at krishnaday.com/shoppable hangouts, which has got direct links to all of these examples I'm going to show you. I really like this example. It wasn't the first Shoppable Hangout, but it was actually with Best Buy, which for me was really a great idea. They partnered with Google, and they had this event which was held just before December. Unfortunately, the video is no longer visible for us to look at, but you can see the event page. And the idea was what are last-minute deals that you could look to make as in terms of a purchase, in terms of from their store. So that was a brilliant idea. So the idea is you watch the event, and I'll come to how that works in a moment, but you watch the event, and as they were going through and reviewing the different products, if you so wished, you could then click through to actually make a purchase. And those links are still live as we speak now. The next example I wanted to give you, because I'm in Ireland and I always like to see examples in Europe, and this was in January, and in fact another context for Ireland is that there's a gentleman that you might come across, such I know you're such a dapper dresser there, James, in the UK, is a gentleman called Darren Kennedy. He's an Irish fashion guru, so to speak, and he and somebody else co-hosted this event, and it was for Topman. So again, it was run on an event page on Google Plus, and they did a preview of the show of the autumn-winter collection for Topman, and they also did behind-the-scenes coverage. And as those different items were being paraded, should we say, down the runway by gentlemen, then you actually could make a purchase. So then let's go on to the first sports event I ever saw, and in fact I think that ever happened. And I thought this was quite interesting. It was for Nascar, and what they did in terms of in this particular event, and the guys in the US will be better versed at NASCAR, I'm sure, than I am, but actually had something I took a screenshot of inside the event in this case, where if you actually made a purchase while this event was on, and of course they were selling their kit and products, you actually got a bumper sticker. So there was something to incentivize you to make a purchase there. You got something unique to say, you know, I hung out with Dale Jr. and Jimmy. So that was really quite an interesting approach. That was in February. We've gone forward into March, and this is another one from the UK, where Nike and Asos, the shopping channel actually, or shopping e-commerce site, partnered together, celebrating the 27th year of the Nike Air Max. And again, you could make purchases as they were reviewing different models there. And then let's move finally to this example, which was Kohl, which was an online retailer again and store, and they actually brought in a designer that worked with them, so you could shop and you could watch and you could actually make a purchase of these new fashions that were about to be launched. So this was really interesting in terms of big brands partnering with this, but what about us? What happens if we're a smaller organization? And in fact, I just want to highlight something that you might have seen on some Hangouts. These Shoppable Hangouts are working in a way where you actually are going to click on a link. So an example would be a Q&A app. Have you ever seen a Hangout which has got a Q&A app in it? This is another one from Asos. You actually click on that, and then that opens up the Hangout, and on the right-hand side, you'll see all of those links. And most of those links were then actually going back through a Google shopping area back into the people's websites. And so, as an example, we'll see here on the right-hand side on the Q&A app where it opens up and you can see that information. So it's the same approach that happens for the Shoppable Hangout. So what really intrigued me, which is probably why you invited me on to the show this week, was I saw some content being shared by a gentleman called Mike Downs, who's in the UK. He's a teacher, and I definitely recommend, if you're interested in this topic, to add him to your circles. And thanks to him, I've got some screenshots. So he has got an early release ability to actually have a look at what they're calling the Promotions app for Google Hangouts. Now, I really like the fact it's called a Promotions app rather than being a Shoppable Hangout, and I'll come to that later, but it doesn't mean you have to always have something for sale. So let me come back to some examples for that a little bit later. But here's an example. It's a screenshot from his show that he's done several little tests. I think he's done 4 or 5 tests now. And in this particular one, he is a photographer, and he was showing an example of how he'd put together a series of links, and you actually could watch this, and he was talking about a particular store in the UK and also linking to products that they had. Now, this screenshot happens to be from YouTube, so what you see, and this is the thing that we're going to have to educate people about when this app becomes available, it says become part of the conversation, and it mentions Q&A apps, but in fact he's actually sharing things there about actually, you know, the promoted content he has. So as an example, he's created a shopping shortlist within Google, and he put a whole bunch of products in there to be able to share in that event. And as he goes through the event, you actually can see him actually highlighting the different products, but when you click on them, you actually then go over to the particular site. So in this particular area, I can see on this screenshot, Camera World, and I can see the product, and if I clicked on that in real time, I would then be taken directly to that part of the website where it had that product. So that's really quite interesting. He also did another few tests as well. On this one, he was testing the Q&A app and also in terms of running it alongside the Shoppable Hangout app as well. So he's doing some really interesting testing, so you could have questions and answers coming up there, but you can't see them necessarily at the same time as you see in the products. So there's going to be a little bit of education that we need to do, but it certainly got me thinking about how you could start to use this Promotions app to support your business strategy. And I was going to come back off the screen share now, but hopefully that's given us all some ideas, and I've got lots of ideas in terms of how you might use it, and that's why I like the fact it's not called a Shoppable Hangout. So take, for example, you're a non-profit. You could be linking over to where people could give you a donation. If you're an author, you might have a free chapter of your book available on your website, and you could link to that in terms of being able to do it. So Mike, I know, is with us here today. He's authored a book. He's got a chapter. He might have a chapter on his website. He could be incentivizing people to do that. He might have a special offer, which actually is for people who join him in a live event. And the other thing to add is that you can add these links as you progress. So it's testing. It's being tested at the minute. I'd highly recommend follow Mike Downs, but let me stop talking there and see what other thoughts you have about Shoppable Hangouts and the Promotions app.
Christ almighty, that was a start and a half. Blimey. Krishna, look, hey, thanks. I mean, that was absolutely on the nail. And I think you've given people a great introduction as to what shoppable Hangouts are. And I think you're absolutely right to bring up the point that they're not terming them as shoppable, because it is a little bit more than that. And I think your point about the downloads from chapters for authors is very pertinent. I was looking at it in terms of giving advisory, looking at the whole tourism board out there who perhaps want to give away free leaflets to people and say, look, we're going to talk about the Spanish tourism industry, and here you can look at a downloadable guide to Marbella or wherever it may be. So I think you're absolutely right with that. One thing of point, and you mentioned about Mike Downs to be a perfect person to look at this and follow within the Google Plus circles. I couldn't agree more. Two things of mention. In some of the trials that he's doing, he's not only using Google Plus Hangouts, he's also using an alternative, which is called Zoom.us. Is that right, Krishna?
It is, yeah. So he's using that for screen sharing. So he's still doing a Hangout, and but he's actually using Zoom.us, which is a product. And I understand he's actually working with them on some other projects, but he was using that for screen sharing, and you'll see that in one of his Hangouts as well.
So it's quite an advanced function of Hangouts, basically. But
what I really liked about it is in that particular episode he actually can have a screen share like I had, but he also showed his face, and he could move where it was like picture in picture, and he could move that around. So it seems to me like it's an additional level that he's taken Hangouts to, which is really worth exploring. But definitely check out the content he's sharing, and he's really interested. He's actively seeking feedback. And I should say that how I came across it was somebody who we all know, Ronnie Bintzer, who is the Hangout master, and he had posted about it. So I went and had a look and then gave my initial feedback. I did that as a write-up, but he's actively looking for feedback. Now, the one thing I would say is increasingly we're seeing people watching Hangouts on mobile devices, and I've got an iPhone 5S. I haven't tested it on a BlackBerry device or Windows or Android device at the minute, but I can't see the shoppable content there. So we'll need to have to think about how we might use it, but lots and lots of opportunities. Let's say you've got a live event coming up, you might have early bird tickets. I mean, I've done podcasts and webinars for those for many years where I'm promoting something that's coming up on behalf of somebody else. And you could actually be directing people to that content. You could be saying, go and read the article. So talked about the article. I could have had a live link there to that article that you could have put into the Hangout, James. You could have had live links for all of the people who are here with you today to content that you want to direct them to. And of course, then there might be even those people who are using affiliate marketing. You could be doing that. The opportunities are endless.
Yeah, I often say that Hangouts are Skype on speed. And maybe Shoppable or promotion Hangouts will be sort of Hangouts on speed. But just to bring up in the comment stream, and if you're not watching this in Google Plus or YouTube and you're watching it elsewhere on anybody's websites, wherever it's been embedded, I'm just going to bring in this share here for a second from Mark, who's actually kindly put the see, there you go. This would be a classic example of when you can actually have a live link, because in the event stream, that is an editable link. But just in case you want any more information on this, Krishna has put her link on that presentation. But if you don't get that, I've put it together as this. So it's a bit.ly link, so bit.ly/hangout shop, and that will go to all the information that Krishna's just shared very, very kindly. So thank you ever so much for that, Krishna. Just got to find where that is. So there we go. That's a little bit. That's the first segment there of using Hangouts in a slightly different environment. A very exciting progression, I think, in this area that we're in at the moment. And certainly, I think what we're finding from a lot of people is that Hangouts can be so versatile, and it sort of crosses genres, crosses industries, and certainly that shoppable Hangout side could work very, very well. I should have said at the start, by the way, we're using the hashtag marketing mix. So again, if you're watching this on a variety of different websites and you're not on Google Plus or YouTube, do just send a tweet with hashtag marketing mix, and we'll try to bring the conversation together. And the best thing about using a very generic hashtag is you can actually bring in tweets from people who've got no affiliation whatsoever to this Hangout. And I particularly like this one. Today's marketing mix is different. Thank you very much. It's nice to be different. It's about the new 4 Ps: people, positioning, pointed, personalized. And I think that actually fits quite neatly into some of Grant's stuff, which is coming up at the end. And I often say Grant Leboff has got one of the best names I know. But I think, Freak, you actually have one of the even better ones. who's saying he's so glad he made it. So, Freak, I'm really pleased that you're here. So, thanks ever so much. And just a little, we've always got Phil here. Who's coming in. I hope the sun is shining in Cornwall today. There's lots of scones and jam. Now, how very British is that? We have somebody having a cream tea. Okay, let me move on to the onto the next one while I try and fathom out where I'm going to take this off. Actually, I've managed to delete that. That's interesting. I've deleted a comment stream without taking it off of the eyeball. That's cool. Let's take it off of that and see how that looks. There we go. I'm back in again. Okay, so we're going to our next 10-minute segment. Now, I'm afraid Mark Traphagen, who many of you will know, is a phenomenal resource when it comes to all things Google content, you name it. But one of these pictures, which I've got to share it with you because this was shared earlier on by a gentleman who I'm a great fan of, a guy called Ray Hilt. And I must just share this with you because I think this absolutely sums up our friend here, Mark Traphagen. And, you know, so he's the plus of author authority. And I love that. And I don't think there's any greater introduction to Mark Traphagen than that one there by Ray. But is that your normal pose, Mark?
Yeah, this happens to me everywhere I go. You know, females just break into Broadway dance numbers around me. It's very embarrassing. It's hard to get restaurant reservations. No, some people will recognize that. Hopefully, many people recognize that as being a Photoshop from a scene from the season finale of this year's Mad Men. And Ray picked up on that because recently at SMX Advanced in Seattle, our presentations, my panel, we all did Mad Men themed panels. We even dressed as Mad Men characters for the panel. So that's where the initial idea came from. But that was brilliant what Ray did. I loved it so much I made it my cover photo for now Google Plus.
And I'm not surprised. I tell you what, if I could stand on a stairway like that with beautiful girls all around me, then I'd be a very happy man. But it's been an exciting couple of weeks, and I don't think you've probably slept, have you, Mark? Given all the changes, and I know you're going to sort of talk a little bit about authorship and what's changed and what's happening, and maybe other stuff from the I/O conference. So shall I let you take the floor without your sidekick, who hopefully will join us later?
Yeah, it's much harder for me without Eric's hand up my back, moving my mouth and talking. So I'll try to do my best as just the ventriloquist dummy on its own. But yeah, big news this week in the Google authorship world. Many people by now may be aware, if you didn't see the news, you may have started noticing it in your search results, that Google has removed all author photos from search results. Before now, in most of the world, if you search for someone whose content was connected through Google authorship or who Google thought had a high degree of confidence that they were the author of a piece of content, they would show what we call an authorship-rich snippet in the search results. Now, since December of last year, that snippet could come in different ways, but the full form of it would have the author's photo taken typically from their Google Plus profile appearing next to the search result. Last Wednesday, just a week ago exactly, John Mueller, was the name, John Mueller of Google Webmaster Tools, announced in a post of his that they would be removing all of those photos. Now, the first piece of news I want to get across is that they have not removed authorship. The authorship connection still works, but now if you have a proper authorship connection to your content on the web, at the most what will show is a byline, meaning your name, by Mark Traphagen, by James Dearsley, underneath the title, the clickable title of the piece of content in Google search results. And that in the US now, clicking on that byline leads to the person's Google Plus profile. They used to show, in addition to the byline used to, in the US, again, it's different in some parts of the world, clicking the byline used to connect you to a set of specialized search results. They'd be search results only for content from that author, which was kind of cool, but that's gone for now. And then in the US, we had an additional link next to that, often, but not always, that would be in X number of Google Plus circles. So for me, it would say, by Mark Traphagen, and then in 87,000 whatever Google Plus circles. And you click that to go to the person's Google Plus profile. Now the name goes. So that's the big change. The question, of course, comes up is why? Why did they take this out? Well, the initial reason given by John Mueller was simply, he said, it's part of Google's mobile-first strategy, which means Google's moving in the direction that many large websites are, which is realizing that mobile is becoming the predominant form by which people access the web. At SMX Advanced just a few weeks ago, Matt Cutts said that Google expects that sometime in 2014, the majority of searches on Google will be done on mobile devices. So in preparation for that, they are trying to unify their interface and make it more mobile-friendly. Well, images in the search, these rich snippets, while they can be very attractive and they might add a lot to search, don't do as well on mobile. They take up a lot more bandwidth. They take up a lot more screen space, which is very, very precious, especially when you're talking about small smartphones and that type of device. So that was the reason given. But many of us who are involved in this think there has to be more to it than that. This was a major feature that's been out for 2 years. They're suddenly taking it away. You know, what does that mean? Well, very quickly in a Hangout that John Mueller does weekly called Google Webmaster Central, where anyone can come in and ask questions about Google search and website optimization and things like this, my friend Joshua Berg got to ask, you know, can you give us a little more on this, a little more detail on it? He drew John out a little bit more, and we did begin to hear that they'd done some, they've apparently been doing some testing, some research, and he didn't give a lot of detail, but my takeaway is, this is, I want to emphasize, this is my own supposition, not exactly what John said, was that I think they may have been seeing that these author photos had too much strength in search, that they were distracting from other things that Google wants you to be looking at. Whether or not, you know, we can argue about the click-through rate, all that sort of thing, but now the real true diehard conspiracy theorists out there, and I got a lot of comments about this, believe that it was competing too much with the ads on Google. You know, I don't necessarily buy that. I think that's a bit of a stretch, and I really do buy that Google, yes, they want you to see the ads, yes, they want you to click on the ad, that's where they make their money, but I really do think Google ultimately at the end of the day realizes that the best thing for their product, the best thing for those ads is the optimum user experience in search. So I think removing the photos has something to do with that. Final thing I'll say before I get any comments or questions is that John also said we're constantly testing these things. Just because it's gone now doesn't mean that's forever. We're going to see the effect that having just the bylines has. We're going to keep testing this. And so it's possible that this or some other change will happen in the future. So I'll stop there for now and see if you have any questions or... actually, I won't stop. I do have a screen share, if I can bring it quickly, just to show another very interesting thing that happened just here. And again, this is a change for the U.S. The U.K. and some other users in other parts of the world have had this, but this is, we're seeing now in the U.S. at the same time that we lost the authorship photos, we're seeing for the first time in the U.S., other than very brief tests, on a limited basis, branded logo images in personalized search. By personalized search, I mean when you're searching Google while logged into your Google account. Now, you will only see this. The example there on the screen, you know, is a brand logo showing up in a result for Google Plus content, and it has to be from brands that you have in your circles. And it looks like, from some initial testing we've done, that it needs to be a brand that you've done some engaging with. So if you've never, you know, circled a brand, but you've never +1'd anything, you never commented, you never shared, you're going to be less likely to see this. But for brands that you engage with, they're now getting a special emphasis here in the U.S. in personalized search. So let me halt there and see if there's any questions or comments.
Christ, that suggests that move again, doesn't it? It almost reinforces that move away from and your conspiracy theory there a little bit, in that it's competing with the ads. What it looks like is they are starting to promote the brands again in Google Plus.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen that. I mean, this makes sense to me when you take into like everything they've been doing recently. The move toward improving the connection between local experience for brands and their Google Plus brand page, making it easier to connect the two together. Then Google My Business, huge thing, came out just a couple weeks ago, which is an all-encompassing dashboard for getting your business connected on Google, including properly setting up a Google Plus business page and setting up your locations if you have a local business or local franchises. So all of that means, yes, they are very much now getting getting the business end of Google Plus up and going, making it easier for businesses to connect, and showing that we want to promote you, we want to give you special. I also want to emphasize again, these changes that we're seeing are in personalized search. I think that's, or what I think in the UK, I think it's called private search for you guys. That is significant because I think it means that we're going to see certain search features being more personalized. As more and more people have Google accounts, Google will be able to say, yes, we don't want to show these rich snippets, all these bells and whistles to everyone necessarily, but we do. I'm sorry, I think my screen share is still showing there. I thought I turned it off.
Do you know what? I deliberately didn't tell you that because A, the content was so good, and B, you're so synonymous with authorship now that you've actually become its own authorship screen share. So I thought it was perfect.
I've melded with the machines. Bound to happen eventually. But what I was trying to emphasize is that I think what we're seeing here is a hint that we've known that for years that search is becoming more and more and more personalized. But semantic search and all the connections with this, I think things like author authority, as any kind of author rank might come in the future, that it's going to be highly connected to personalization. So that we might not just say that Mark Traphagen will get a boost for everybody searching about related topics, but maybe Mark Traphagen will get more of a boost when Mike Allton searches for him because Mike has a connection with Mark Traphagen.
And on that note, while we're all here, I'd like to mention that Eric has very gladly joined us. Hi, Eric.
Hi. Sorry I couldn't be there right at the start, but I'm excited to be here now.
No, it's fine. It's perfect. And you've got a far more beautiful backdrop than what you normally have.
Well, it's actually here in Falmouth, Massachusetts. And usually I have something that looks like the one that Mark has, but at the moment I'm enjoying, it's out there, summer weather. So
that's good. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us, Eric. It's really appreciated. We've just gone through a little bit of an overview from Mark as to where we are with all this authorship stuff and what's changed, and he's just very kindly sort of run us through everything, and just sort of inviting questions. One thing I'd like to sort of pick up on is that I wasn't surprised that they made this change upon the point, in hindsight, when they said that they wanted to declutter search. They were concentrating more on the visual aesthetics. And at that point that they were saying too many people had started to get author photos, and that it was then starting to make the search ugly. Do you think that had anything to do with it, Mark or Eric, at all?
Yeah, there certainly could be an aesthetic point to it, and the points that John Mueller is making seem to be more on the technical end, things that you have to do to make mobile search, in particular on smaller screens, smaller devices, work more efficiently. There could also be an aesthetic end to it. We've got to remember that everything, I have a firm belief, I think Eric does too, that Google doesn't do anything on whims. They do everything based on data. So, there's something in their data that is telling them that overall it's a better experience in search for people without these author photos right now than with. Overall. Now that's not, when I say that, I get screaming and yelling from individual authors who say, like, I know this was better for me. I know that it was better for my audience to see my photo. Well, Google's looking at the whole big picture. And so they wouldn't have done this unless they thought in some way it was improved. Now, as John said in the Hangout, that they'll test that this may have been an overreaction. They'll see that in the coming weeks as the data comes in, and maybe they'll tweak it. I expect that they will in the future. We may see some partial return or some other form of author-rich snippet that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to expand on that just a little bit. I mean, when you talk about the click-through rate piece, right? I'm sure that John Mueller's comments were addressing the aggregate click-through rate on the page, right? And every author see fit over their picture disappearing is thinking, well, the click-through rate of my one individual result went up. Well, that isn't Google's game. They're not trying to get you, an individual author, a higher click-through rate. They're managing the whole picture. And then keep in mind, and I apologize if you already said this, Mark, but that Google, what Matt Cutts said at SMX Advanced, that mobile search was going to exceed desktop search on a daily basis by the end of this year. And one of the big things about mobile devices, right, is that they load stuff a lot slower. And if you happen to know, I'm going to get slightly geeky for a second here. If you know your TCP/IP protocols, you'll know that each one of those images represents a fresh download, a fresh file downloading to that mobile device. The number of files involved is a big variable in how long it takes for it to load. And it's a big deal in terms of the experience on this device right here.
I'm just going to go and research my TCP-IP variables, because I, for one, very, very regretfully, Eric, have absolutely no idea. As soon as I start getting to acronyms and initials, I'm lost, totally and utterly lost. But I will nod at the unbelievable amount of information that you guys share on a daily basis and agree with you that it must be very important. But
James, can I ask a question, since we have
please,
both Mark and Eric here, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have been doing. So is it okay to ask a question, Mark? James?
No, please fire away. Interrupt as much as you can.
Yeah, I know. I actually read your article about it. I'm not sure. I think it was yourself, Mark, who'd written about this when it happened this last week. And I think one of the comments, and there was lots of commentary, of course, people not being very happy about the change and so on. But I think I also read about the fact that some people, it actually might turn some people off actually implementing authorship. There's still a lot of people and a lot of websites, let's say from small to large organizations, who've not implemented authorship. And I'd be interested in your perspectives, either one of you, in terms of if there's somebody watching this today who says, what is authorship? Let me, because people might be new to it, and why should I still be bothered? What would you say to those people who've not yet implemented authorship?
That's a great question, and I appreciate it. First of all, just do a quick little plug that we're going to be having in the not too distant future. We'll have a study coming forth from Stone Temple.
Wait, that's mine. That's mine. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but I am your marketing director, so this is my.
Okay.
But we will have a study coming forth that will talk about the implementation of authorship, which has been an issue. But so stay tuned for that. But more on point to your question, Krishna. Yeah, will this lower the incentive for people to sign up for authorship, as it were, to go through the trouble of connecting it? I think it's undoubtable that it does, because the photos were the big carrot. I think it's a small vision to see it that way, but it's inevitable. That's the way people saw it. I want, look, bah, it's me in search. People wanted that photo. There was a widespread belief that the photos almost automatically increase the click-through rate of your search. I'm going to be doing a major post for Moz at Moz.com next week, where I will take on that issue and say maybe it never was really as big as we thought, and even if it was, it's a big possibility that Google saw that it was drifting away, it was going away, as people got just used to seeing author photos in the search. But back to, should they still do it? I'm a huge advocate that people should still do it, should still connect to it. First of all, it still works. The byline is there. I would make an argument that although the byline certainly isn't as eye-grabbing as the photo was, that I think people, there's a case to be made that people don't just mindlessly click the top search result. We know that the majority of people, in most cases, click the first or the second result. But in a lot of cases, when I go on a search, I'm still looking. I see that first result. The first result, something about the title of it doesn't, say, that's maybe not the best. Let me look at the others. And what do I look at next? I look at the descriptive text underneath each one to see if it gives me a little better clue about which result might best answer the question that I have at the moment. But when I'm looking at that, now I'm going to see those bylines, and that's going to become part of the equation. Whether consciously or unconsciously, I'm going to say to myself, oh, this content not only looks good in the description, but it was written by a real person, and maybe even it's a person I know or a person I've heard of. So I think it can still have some positive effect. Second thing is that the authorship project and the bigger project of author authority in Google continues and will continue for years to come. It's something Google has said again and again. Matt Cutts has said, we want to get this. This is something we're interested in. We want to be able to figure out who are the trusted authorities in any given topic and how and in what way we should evaluate that and how we should boost that. So by staying connected to authorship, you're saying to Google, you're giving Google that direct connection, saying, here's my content, here's how it does, here's how it performs, look at how people link to it, look how they share it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think if you're trying to build that reputation, I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and what I'd add to that is that unless Mark steals what I'm about to say for the article he's about to put up on Moz, that 3 months from now, people are going to be writing about the awesome brand value of having your name just simply show up in the search results, whether anyone clicks on it or not. I mean, they're totally going to be buying into that. And I'm just going to draw out a little bit more about what we're doing with the authorship study. We took 100 top media sites and we evaluated the quality of implementation of the rel author tagging, whether they follow Google's recommendations or not. And it's actually very few of them do it correctly, and many of them don't even try at all. And then also evaluated whether or not they were getting authorship benefits in terms of the display and search. So that's the study that's probably a few weeks out from publishing, but we have all the raw data, but it takes a while to sift through it and figure out what it means.
I tell you what, I think if there's one thing to mention on this topic, I think the fact that it's not finished here. I think this is going to be a constantly evolving topic that we're going to have. And actually, funnily enough, I'm just going to bring in this question from Ray, because he is actually alluding to something which I thought about when we saw your post, your screen share, sorry, Mark, about the company side. So the personalised responses, and actually, I think it is still personalised responses or personalised search in the UK as well, but just with an S, not with a Z, a Z, I think we call it. But what you've got is you've got a question from Ray here. So we bring in, if unified UI, and I'm going to nod and agree with that, aesthetics and speed are a factor, why show them on private searches which will be increasingly used? Which I think is quite an interesting question, because arguably they're saying one thing but they're doing another, which is they're still going to include them in certain places. So I don't know if you've got a response to that, or whether that is a classic case of this is going to be an evolution, not a revolution.
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. I think it is an evolution. I think we want to continue to test it. One thing I would say about that, and I've been asked this question several times the last couple of days, is that, first of all, keep in mind that both the author results, which show up for Google Plus content, and the brand result that I showed you in personalized search are extremely limited compared to the general authorship results we were seeing before. As I said earlier, and this is true whether it's for a personal piece of content or a brand content, that in the testing I've done so far, it only shows up for people or brands who first of all you have in your circles, who are highly relevant to you. They tend to be people or brands who, when you go in your circles on Google Plus, show up high in the relevance sort, whatever that means to Google. And in the brand case especially, we've seen that brands that you've engaged with. So like I have friends who follow a number of brands. They've circled brands on Google Plus, but they have never engaged with those brands, never plus one them, never shared anything, never commented on them. We couldn't get this to come up, even in the most precise searches for them. Whereas for me, with the brands that I have engaged with, I can get it to come up. So the quick answer is that it's very limited. So I don't think it has the issues that they were seeing with the other, and I think they want to have some playground where they continue to test the effect. So they're willing to give up a little bit, maybe to get some of that testing benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to add here. So.
No, that's fine. I was actually just madly trying to tap away. Eric, your lower third, if you just want to turn it on and turn it off again, the other way around, because it doesn't appear so well in the or the video film strip gets in the way. But look, just for anybody out there who's interested to keep up to date with what these guys are doing, you can follow their blog here. I said it here. So bit.ly, so bit.ly /Stone Temple HOA, and that's a direct link to their blog, and there's fascinating information forever being posted on there. Okay, so what we're just going to do is we're going to go into a little chat now about social media and what's going on and what's changed and what's exciting and what's happened over the last couple of weeks. What I want to do is I just think this is absolutely legendary because Mike Allton is not only, I suppose, founder. Is that the right word to use for Social Media Hat, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So founder of the Social Media Hat, but also I think that you went to probably the best named university in the world, which is called the Bowling Green State University. And I just think that's fantastic. What a university.
Oh, look, you got a C+ and everything. Oh, that was C++, sorry.
Plus.
So there we are. So we got some expert talking about social media from the Bowling Green of University. And Mike, look, what have you got for us? What's been happening? What's been changing in the world of social?
Well, it's interesting because compared to previous weeks, months, years, the past couple of weeks have been relatively quiet. Last weekend we had the trifecta of Google Plus's third birthday. We had the virtual bloggers conference going on, put together by Chef Literally, and then of course Monday we had Social Media Day. So maybe Facebook decided that wasn't a good time to change their cover photo and throw the internet into a hissy. So over the past few weeks we've had mostly mobile developments. Interestingly, we've been talking about Google's emphasis on mobile. So we see that reflected on Google Plus. Mark already mentioned the Google My Business. So last week, Google released a corresponding mobile app, the Google My Business mobile app for both Android and for iOS, that lets you manage and even create Google Plus pages from mobile. Android users, this is probably kind of a so-so announcement because you could do a lot of this already from the Google Plus app itself. But for iOS users who have to log out and then log back into the Google Plus app to even get to one or more of their pages, like myself, this is huge. You can open up this totally separate app. You can access any one of your Google Plus pages, and you can get into the analytics. So you can see what's happening real time with your page, with your audience, with your posts. You can start to get some demographic data, some reach data, and really help fine-tune your strategy when it comes to what you're doing on Google Plus and how it's impacting your business. A couple of the drawbacks, or one of the big drawbacks, I think Mark even mentioned it too earlier on one of my posts, was that there's no notifications. So that's a shame, and we're hoping that Google fixes that pretty quickly. Because as a page manager, one of the most important things going on is, okay, who's talking to you? Who's responding to your posts? What conversations and comments are going on? And if we can't manage that from that app, that's a huge missing piece. So that happened last week, and at almost the same time, I think it was the same day, Facebook updated their standalone app for page management. And it was kind of, actually it happened just before the Google Plus page app was released, because I made the comment and the observation that I've been hoping all along that Google would follow suit. This is one of the areas where Facebook has excelled. They've had this standalone app for, I don't know, a year or more that's been really convenient for Facebook page managers, having a separate place to log in and manage those pages, and finally Google Plus followed suit. So with the updated Facebook app, it's cleaner, it's a lot easier to use, and there's some additional features in there. But the bottom line is, if you have a Google Plus page or a Facebook page, make sure that you have both of these apps installed on your mobile device so that you can at least do some basic monitoring and status updates and those kinds of things wherever you're at.
I have to say, just say, Mark, I was really impressed by the new Google Your Business app, and especially the analytics side, because I thought it gave you far more than some of the other apps out there that actually give you. But it's a question. I have to say, from my Facebook side, I generally don't use the external app for my page management to use it. Do you do that religiously?
Yeah, I do. Partly because I have, I don't know, a couple dozen Facebook pages, of course, that I'm monitoring for clients. But even for myself, I'm obsessed with numbers. I want to see metrics. So I'm looking at my Google Analytics throughout the day. I'm looking at my notifications throughout the day, and I want to see as much as I can of how what I'm doing on social is being received, how it's impacting my business. And it's interesting because both the Facebook Pages Manager and the new Google My Business app, the metrics are remarkably similar. So you can see, how many new followers you're getting, how much reach your posts are getting, the types of posts that seem to be doing well. You've got different kinds of posts. You've got text, you've got images, you've got links and video. Some of those are going to do better than others, depending on time of day and your audience and the content. So it's a good, excuse me, it's a good idea to be looking at that and trying to gauge what should you be doing differently in the future. And just, again, being able to have that quick snapshot on your mobile device wherever you're at, particularly for business owners who aren't sitting in front of a computer all day long. If you're running a shop or something like that, you can whip out your smartphone if you've got a break, and you can take a look at what's happening real time and get some good insights.
Yeah, so maybe I need to pick up my apps again and have a little look into it. But and I think you and I just talked about this briefly beforehand about something new the last couple of weeks is Twitter seemed to be looking at allowing people to purchase directly from tweets. Is that right? Have I got the right end of the stick on?
That is absolutely right, and it's funny because that dovetails exactly with what Krishna was talking about earlier, because it's a trend that we're seeing. If you step back and look, it's a trend that we're seeing in social media, creating what we call call to action buttons, making it easy and apparent for your audience to know what to go do next, whether it's go make a purchase or go read or go subscribe, whatever that is. Okay, so we've seen that for a long time now with Facebook ads. When you're creating a Facebook ad, you can add a little call to action, and you've got up to like 6 different choices on those ads. And we're seeing that with Hangouts. We've seen it in recent months with actual Google Plus posts. It's hard to implement, so not a lot of people are doing it yet, but you can put a call to action onto a Google Plus post that would be superimposed over the image. And now Twitter's testing the exact same thing. Right now they're in limited beta testing with Fancy. We don't have any official word. This is just observations that people have noticed, and it's only on mobile. This is why I said there's this trend going on this week with mobile developments. Only on mobile. If you're on Twitter, if you're following Fancy, you can see these buy now buttons. And I'm sure it'll follow suit with these other social networks, and it'll be opened up eventually to big brands and publishers, and hopefully they'll have multiple different kinds of calls to action, so that it's not just purchasable, it's more that promotion like we talked about earlier. So along the same lines with mobile, real quick, Vine. I don't know if anybody on the panel even uses Vine, but some people do. If you're into video, I'm really not personally. But
can I just say what I aim to achieve with Vine in the next year? Have you seen those Vine videos where people are eating a segment of donut? And I think 6 seconds is a perfect time to decimate a donut in Vine, and that's my sole aim.
Yeah, that's about how long it would take me too. So that would work. Instagram, 12 seconds. That's too long. The donut's gone. So on Vine, what they've added are loop counts. So these are similar to view counts on videos and content on other platforms. So it's an interesting way for Vine users to begin to gauge a little bit more specifically how successful individual pieces of content are. And I'm sure, like everybody else, this will evolve into additional sets of metrics as more and more people take Vine seriously as a network and a platform for engaging and broadcasting their content. We're going to want to see that data. So hopefully that continues. And then lastly, this is continuing with the video topic, YouTube has added a tip jar. So up until now, if you were a video content producer and you were using YouTube and you wanted to monetize your business or what you were doing, there were really only 2 different ways. You could put advertisements, common. You'd have ads appearing on your video, or of course you could talk about what you do and use the video to promote other offline services. The problem with advertisements is that if you aren't getting into the 100,000 plus views level, the amount of revenue that you get from advertising is kind of paltry. So what YouTube has added is a little tip jar where, as a viewer, as a consumer of content, if I like what you've said on YouTube, if I appreciate what you've been doing for me over time, I can give you $1 or whatever. I can buy you a cup of coffee and show that I've appreciated what you've done. plugin developers, for WordPress, I've been doing this for a long time. You can use the plugin for free, but if you find you've been using it for a couple of years and you really like it, go and send them $5-10. So this will be really interesting. It's not as cut and dried as some might think. If you're not a YouTube channel producer, you think, oh, okay, yeah, put a tip jar out there. But if you are, there's a question there whether or not you should. Am I demeaning my content by asking you for money? That's the debate that some people are having right now, so it'll be interesting to see how that develops. And it'll be interesting to see if this spills over into other platforms. This WordPress plugin and other similar areas, I'm familiar with that, and some of the other people in this space are, but general users aren't going to be familiar with that concept. But YouTube, obviously, millions and millions of people are consuming videos every single day. This tip jar is going to be extremely prevalent. People are going to see it all over the place, and so we might see this spilling over into blog content. So I put a tip jar on my blog posts, since thousands of people read it all the time, and they don't hire me for anything. Maybe I should put $1 tip jar on there. We'll see.
Absolutely. Let's put tip jars on Hangouts as well. That'd be a good idea, and see how we get on.
James, I have a question and an observation, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I was checking out the Vine. You can see the analytics there. It's quite addictive if you go back to your own Vines, because 6 seconds goes past so quickly. So as you can see, the numbers rank up really quickly. So actually, I quite like the fact that was released. I saw that today in terms of here in the Irish App Store. But a question for yourself, Mike, in terms of what you were saying about the tip jar. I haven't investigated it in terms of whether or not Google are going to be taking a percentage like they would do with helpouts. I don't know if you can explain if that's happening. But I do think, wouldn't it be really cool to say, you've watched the first 5 minutes of this. If you'd like to watch a bit more, put something into the tip jar. Now that would be a really interesting integration. So I could put like an annotation. It comes up at a certain point. If you want to know what the secret was that James released on this Hangout, you've got to now actually give us something in our tip jar.
Yeah, I like that idea. And it's funny because I had the exact same first thought. When I saw the tip jar model for YouTube, I thought, okay, are they going to take a cut of this? And I don't have an answer for that yet. I haven't been able to find any indication that it's happening. But that's definitely a concern, or at least a question that I had, and I'm sure others have it as well. So we'll be digging into that for sure.
I'll tell you what.
So I had a comment. Oh.
No, I was just going to say, Eric, just because I think you're like this. We were trying to incentivize Mark earlier on to take his top off and go topless. So if anybody here fancies Mark to go topless, we'll try and put a tip jar out somewhere, and we'll get him doing that later on, because we had a bit of a problem with the female audience, which is there wasn't that many people engaging, and we felt that would be one way of getting the female.
As I said in the comments, I think you get a lot more money in a tip jar if it's to keep my shirt on.
There you go.
I really rudely interrupted. What's up?
I was just going to add one more comment on the tip jar too. I want to add a little perspective, right? Which is that, first of all, I think it's great for certain kinds of video producers to be able to do that. But if you're doing videos because you're promoting a consulting business where you get paid thousands and thousands of dollars, don't put a tip jar out there. To me, that's when you are, in fact, devaluing what you're doing, because you're going to try to collect, $50 from people over a couple of months and turn away 3 prospects. Doesn't add up. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I should add that this is totally opt-in. This isn't automatic. So if you don't like the idea, don't feel like you've got to rush to your YouTube channel and turn it off. You'll have to think about this for yourself and decide that this is going to work for you and your YouTube channel. Turn it on deliberately.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been appalling at keeping this to 10-minute slots, because I think it's been such fascinating insight. But I'm just going to bring this comment for you, Mike, on that, which is, I think the tip jar on YouTube is take a big bite out of Patreon.com. So that's just a thought from that, Jeff. So thanks for bringing that in. Okay, look, what I thought we'd do, the final sector. We're going to talk a little bit to Grant Leboff, who, as I've said before, I think has the greatest name known to man. Especially for an author, because you're never going to forget it. But I met Grant at a speaking event, and he gave probably, it was a keynote speech, so you expect it to be a good speech, but I was surrounded at the time by, I would guess, 700 to 1,000 estate agents, so real estate agents. Now, bearing in mind, they're normally more in tune with what's in their wine glass or their beer glass, especially at this event. To have the entire audience captivated. And Grant didn't have one slide, not one single slide, and he talked, I think it was 45 minutes, I think, Grant, if I remember correctly.
Something like that, yeah.
And I've never seen, I mean, okay, seeing estate agents with their chins wide open, it's not, I'm one of them. I used to be one of them. So I know what it's like. But these guys were captivated by what Grant had to say. And he's a best-selling author of, I think, is it 3 books now?
3 books, yeah.
3 books, including one of these is this one here, Sticky Marketing. Yeah. So I wanted to get Grant on here to just talk a little bit about himself and what he does. And because we're sort of tight for time, what I just wanted to do was actually just sort of start it off. Because I think one of the best quotes that I've found from his book is this one. I'm going to just kick you off with this, Grant, and see if you could just sort of just get us into the mood in terms of it all, really. So engaged prospects and customers should be seen as partners in assisting the communication of a company's message. So how does that relate to what stickier marketing is all about?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was just that, for me, you go to a lot of conferences. I'm sure the other guests find this as well. You go to a lot of conferences and people are talking about the fact that it's business as usual. And they'll talk about a lot of the tools we've talked about so far today, Google Plus and Facebook and other things, as like, well, they're just new tools in the way that the telephone was for telemarketing or the letterbox was for direct mail. And I fundamentally disagree with that evaluation because for me, there's a big revolution happening. And the revolution is very simple to distill, actually. It's simply this. For the first time in history, everybody is a media company. Everybody has a mechanism for communication. And it changes everything. It changes our relationship with information because you think how much of information has become a commodity. I mean, there's a very famous paper in London called the Evening Standard. The commuters used to buy it on the way home from work. And it used to be 50 pence. Now it's free because they couldn't. You couldn't sell it anymore because that was seen as commoditized information. And when everybody's got a channel, the way information is distributed is different. And so it was this old adage. People always say the customer is king. And I thought, well, actually, I don't think the customer's king anymore. I think the customer's actually more important because they become your greatest advocate, your greatest marketer. And so, before you get a share of wallet, which we're all after, the first thing you need is share of time. And that was about, therefore, having to build community, and then it changes your relationship. I'm not sure even marketing in the images, in what it conjures up for people is even the best word anymore that people have in mind because, the idea of just sort of telling people how good you are at whatever you do has gone. It's got to be about giving people value, creating value around what they do, creating things that are shareable, and that just changes almost every paradigm of marketing that we've ever known. And the tools are great, and many of us use them. Probably everybody that's watching the show uses them. That's why they're watching the show. But getting the strategic thinking behind those tools is paramount. I think a lot of people don't have the thinking right, and that's where things start to go wrong. And
so, arguably, bringing that back to another quote that I got, and annoyingly, I didn't pick it up in my Twitter feed, but this is one of my absolute favourites that you put out there. So, ask not what your marketing can do for you, but what your marketing can do for your customer.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if I'm misquoting this from everybody here on this panel, but I mean, every single one of you guys which is on this panel, the reason that you're here is because you're great at what you do, and the amount of information that is shared by every single one of you is customer centric. It's not anything other than that. I mean, is that a fair thing to say, Grant? Is that the right way to look at it?
Yeah, everybody will know I took that quote from JFK in his famous inauguration speech in 1961 when he famously asked not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. But I thought it was great. Most people's starting point with their marketing is always themselves. What am I good at? What are the benefits I can give? How can I tell people about myself and get it out there and get people to know about me? And actually, yeah, I mean, I'm preaching to converted on the panel today because everybody's doing this, but it's about giving. And if you give things of value to people, it's, we're in a world of attraction now. The power's in the customer. They go look for things. They go and find things. They share things. And therefore, the more that we can give, the more we attract back to us, the more the word spreads. But our greatest marketers today, and I go back to your original quote, are not ourselves anymore. They're our customers, our partners, the whole ecosystem around our business. So that can be strategic partners, that can be colleagues, that's our employees. you know, it's amazing to me how many companies are still shackling their employees so they can't use social media in the office, and they can't. That's part of the company's ecosystem. They're some of your greatest advocates. You know, it's absolutely crazy to do that. So, but it's getting that mindset. It's getting that mindset and then using that. And the other thing is just understanding what people share. So the other thing that I always say to people now is marketing isn't about your products and services. It's about people. It's about emotion. It's about people. Because when you think about what we share about stories. You know, we were talking about tools today. You know, during this show, Mark was talking about authorship. But everything was being related back to people and experiences and how it works for them and those things, because they're the things we share. We don't share stories about tools and apps. We share stories about how those apply back to us. And yet marketing wasn't like that. Go and take a car brochure from 25 years ago, and all it is about the features of the car and pictures of car seats and pictures of gear sticks and that's not what we share online. We share emotions. We share stories about people. And, you know, just as an example, I tried to explain this, and it's not an easy thing to explain. And then Coca-Cola did me the most enormous favor, because, of course, their Share a Coke campaign, although offline, was exactly this. You know, they took a brown sticky liquid and made it all about people, because when my son went to the shops, it could have been Coca-Cola, it could have been a packet of chips, crisps, it could have been anything. He didn't care. He just wanted to make sure he got the names of his friends, so when he went to the picnic the next day, he could give them all the Coke. They took a brown sticky liquid and made it about people. And that's a great lesson for people online as well. It's about how you take your product and service and make it more about people and make it more of an experience, because we're in an experience economy. And an experience economy is simply this: a service is done to you, an experience is done with you. And in a world where everybody's got a media channel, it's done with us. We want to tweet about it, we want to share it, we want to talk about how it relates to us. And if you don't create those experiences, you're going to find that your best marketers, that's your ecosystem around your business, won't engage.
And I think bringing that point up here, I'm just going to bring in Lee's quote, because I think it absolutely sums it up, which is you need to convert your customer from king to evangelist, which, I mean,
yeah,
it neatly sort of brings on some of the other quotes which I love in your book, which include this one, which is engaged prospects and customers should be seen as partners in assisting in the communication of a company's message. And again, I mean, Christ, that's what all of these guys are doing here, which is the amplification of great content. It always brings it back to the primary source. And I've always been a very, very big advocate. People do not want to be sold to. It's absolutely fundamentally wrong. There is always a better way of doing it, which is what I have always termed as the secondary sell. Let somebody else talk about how wonderful Mark and Eric are. Let, you know, say, oh, the social media hat is the best thing since sliced bread. That way, you're going to get a more engaged prospect. And I think that probably says it all, doesn't it? I mean, Grant, is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
look, I hate to. I'm so sorry to interrupt this point, but Eric and I don't want to just be rude and disappear. We do have at the top of the hour. We're late now for a major client call we have to go to. But thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate being here.
Take care, guys.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks so much, Eric and Mark. Really appreciate it. Cheers,
yeah,
cheers.
I was going to say to you, James. You're right. Word of mouth. Look, nothing's changed in as much as word of mouth has always been the most powerful marketing tool anybody's had. It's just that, you know, we've now got word of mouth on speed, because whereas years ago I could affect a few people's opinions at a coffee machine at work, or you know, in a bar after hours or whatever else, suddenly with the power that Google Plus gives us, that Facebook gives us, that Twitter gives us, that our own blogs and websites give us, suddenly all of us have the ability to touch hundreds, thousands, or hundreds of thousands of people. And so every single person has become a media company in their own right, and so we have to treat the way that we deal with customers, that we engage with customers, very differently from perhaps we did 25 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, I'm going to bring this up as a last thing, because it sums up my opinion to advertising, which is advertising is a tax for having an unremarkable product. I love that. It made, you know what? It made me think for a little bit, because I had to go away and just go, what is that? Yeah, okay, I get it. But look, I don't think, I mean, I have to be a little bit crucial, because we've gone over the 60-minute mark, and actually there should only be a 50-minute show, arguably. So that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? So that's sort of being a very, very bad host here. But look, I just want to thank every single one of you for all of your time. There's been some great comments. Krishna, Thanks for the interesting presentation on Shoppable Hangouts. You're going to visit your website. Grant, this is about you. Peter Lunn mentioning how he's looking forward to hearing from you. So there's been a lot of great comments here. And just lastly, as a final pun for Grant's books, if you are based in the UK, go to bit.ly/sticky UK if you're UK based, and bit.ly sticky USA if you are US based, and that is the Amazon link for both. For Grant's Stickier Marketing, which is the latest one. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, the follow-up to Sticky Marketing.
Follow-up to Sticky and Stickier. And look, what I promise you is this is going to happen again in 2 weeks' time. Midweek Marketing Mix with some great show guests coming on. I think, if memory serves me correct, we've got David Amalan talking about his latest book. I promise, and I only realised this when I looked down on my film strip, that my shirt is like a complete psychedelic T-shirt. When you actually get into the film strip proper, I look like Where's Wally? If you guys have Where's Wally in the US, but look, you do. There you go. So Where's Wally? Look. Thanks ever so much for joining. Mike, I really appreciate your input. It was fascinating. Krishna, wonderful input. Thank you again. And Grant, I could listen to you for days on end. So
thank you.
Thanks, guys, and to Eric, obviously, and Mark. So I hope you join us next time on the Midweek Marketing Mix. Next week, I have a hangout all about data analytics, Wednesday, 5 o'clock p.m. GMT, 12 o'clock EST, and 9 a.m. PST Wednesday. So do join us for that as well. But thanks for joining us. Cheers, guys.